moving on, our next speakers are Dr. A.K.S. Rawat and Avnish Pandya, Chairman of the Bombay Hemp Company. Dr. Rawat is a PhD in botany and the head of the Department of Pharmacognosy and Ethnopharmacology at CSIR NBRI. A prolific ethnobotanist, Dr. Rawat has developed quality assurance parameters of more than 160 single crude drugs and 30 Ayurvedic formulations. He has published more than 170 original research papers and filed 30 patents. He was also the recipient of the Vigyan Ratna Samman by the state government for 2009-2010. He also holds numerous fellowships and has received many accolades for his work with BGR 34 and indigenous diabetic medicine. His co-speaker Avnish collaborates with industry partners, the Indian scientific community, farmers and industries to create India's own varieties of viable hemp seeds. The research function led by him at BOHECO supports the company's vision to educate Indian society about hemp. He has also been active in creating a network for discourse on medical cannabis in India, bringing together the synergies of application-based research and the collaborative spirit for common good through public-private partnerships. Dr. Rawat, along with Avnish, will now share with us their ideas on why they care.
Good morning to everybody. Respected our beloved Dr. G.N. Singh and our delegates from abroad and Indian delegates. On behalf of NBRI directors and on my behalf, I welcome you all to this summit, which is organized jointly with the Bombay Hemp Company and NBRI. So, yes, we have the responsibility when somebody assign a problem. As an institution of Government India, CSIR, we work on that, and since it is a cannabis, for us it is a drug, a plant-based drug, we have to develop something for human welfare. As Dr. Singh just spoken, we have to generate data, scientific data on that, so that we can get permission from the DCGI, even for the cultivation, which is more. We will discuss more, I think, in the coming session. Dr. Singh has to leave. I mean, I thanks to him. He came here only for 10 minutes. Yesterday, he went in Goa. So I am here till evening. So I will just sum up here, and I may speak later on. But thanks to all of you. We will discuss on. Thank you so much.
So thank you guys for waiting patiently. And the first presentation of the day is very, very simple. It's the theme of the event, the concept of the event is where it all began from. The whole question is, why should we all care, and what does iCare stand for? So as we know, iCare stands for India Cannabis Analysis, Research and Education, and that also complements well with the theme that we are going to portray. So what is medical cannabis? I think all of us by now know medical cannabis is known by different names such as medical marijuana, medical cannabis, bhang, ganja, audyogik bhang, aushadhiya bhang, etc. It's basically the dried leaves, flowers of the plant that are used in different types of formulations to treat different disease areas. I'm not going to get into too much in depth of the science of it because we have experts who are going to talk around it. But yes, medical cannabis is basically, when it's broken down, it is different types of cannabinoids, just like opium as a medicinal plant has the whole concept of opiates. In medical cannabis, we have a concept of cannabinoids. These are all the active compounds, whereas delta-9-THC being the psychoactive one. How can medical cannabis help? Again, during the course of the day, we're going to learn a lot more about how it can help patients, what kind of systems are being used globally, and also probably a more detailed explanation on what the endocannabinoid system is. That is all the cannabinoids that are present within the human body as well as mammals. There are a huge range of disease and critical areas that medical cannabis has showcased some anecdotal evidence so far. There are multiple clinical studies that are happening in terms of specific disease areas. This is a very rough interpretation of what the globe is doing with medical cannabis. As we see, most parts of the Western world have legally available medical cannabis to their patients. It's a regulated industry. A lot of the countries where cannabis is looked at in a decriminalized fashion, where it has not been criminalized yet, countries like India, where yes, cannabis is illegal, specifically in the flower form or the bud form of it, but as all of us know, it's not as enforced as it ideally would be. Definitely, it's illegal in most parts of the East, where though the philosophy of medical cannabis is very Eastern, but it is still illegal there, and some countries we don't have enough information on. Now, where does all of this stem from, right? India was signatory to the United Nations Convention on Narcotic Drugs. We were given 25 years to form a draft narcotic policy as per the convention. And as per the convention, it clearly says that the convention does not apply to the cultivation of cannabis plants exclusively for industrial purposes or for horticultural purposes. Now, as well as this is probably a similar line taking with the opium poppy example, where the countries have to be compliant with the right regulation that is in place for them to cultivate, process, harvest, as well as go ahead and sell that kind of opium poppy. Now, when we look at a broader version, a more Indian version of the Act, we look at the Section 10 of the NDPS Act. The NDPS stands for Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. Section 10 of the NDPS Act, read with Section 8, empowers the state government. So whereas health is a central concern, the formulation of the medicine, the trials, etc. are all central concerns. But whereas the cultivation of the plant is related, that is the excise department and the local bodies, the state government has actually been given the right kind of powers by the center to regulate it within the state. And as per Section 14, there's a special provision relating to cannabis that notwithstanding any contained in Section 8, government may, by special or general order, subject to such conditions that have been described by them, allow cultivation of cannabis plant for industrial purposes, for obtaining fiber and seed. So, whereas currently in India, the NDPS Act suggests that there has been not enough medical evidence of cannabis as a herbal drug, though it has been mentioned in our Ayurvedic systems, but not much modern research has actually taken place to prove what our past claims were. And as Dr. GN Singh mentioned correctly, that we have developed this new phyto-pharmaceutical pathway, which is actually right in the middle of Ayurvedic Siddhi Unani medicine as well as modern medicine. So that is something that we want to keenly explore as well. He also touched upon the mythological association of cannabis. We all know that cannabis leaves, which is known as bhang, is actually a legal commodity. We all have access to bhang in certain states where people use it as not only for therapeutic but as well as recreational purposes. What are the guiding principles of Ayurveda? This is a part of our approach. This is how we want to bring the right kind of light to this concept as well. It depends on Vata, Kapha and Pitta. The only element that we might not know is ether, which means the absence of the other elements. So in Ayurveda, as air, earth, water and fire are important, the absence of these elements is also one of the elements itself. Cannabis, again, like this is to showcase that it has already been mentioned in our pharmacopoeias. This is the homeopathic perspective, where they have mentioned effective conditions and disease areas where, as per the homeopathic studies that were done before, where has it been valuable, the right kind of dosage forms, as well as the right kind of administration of the drug has also been mentioned. Definitely, cannabis is known as Vijaya in our Ayurvedic texts. There is the pharmacopoeia also has a monograph of the plant. Along with that, they also have mentioned some of the famous formulations from cannabis. In fact, there are famous formulations from cannabis even in Unani form of medicine, in Ayurvedic form of medicine, as well as Siddha and Tibi form of medicine. Of course, cannabis is a herbal drug. It has a lot of potential. But at the same time, we also need to acknowledge that cannabis is a poisonous substance, just like opium is. And the concern that the regulators mainly have with cannabis is that of abuse potential as well as diversion of the drug. Hence, they have already devised a system where the regulatory requirement for an Ayurvedic drug which contains cannabis, which is a Schedule E1 substance, has to go through a reverse pharmacological trial, and at the same time, it requires a safety as well as an efficacy study. As far as the indications that we're talking about are existing as per our texts. So this is part of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, and this simplifies the concept for us because it's not like cannabis has been banned from the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. It's just been put in a schedule where it needs to prove its safety because it's a poisonous substance. Vijaya has mentioned in our ancient texts, we have more than 15 critical disease areas that have been mentioned in our ancient texts, ranging from dysmenorrhea to chronic pain to even easier conditions such as common cold, cough, as well as using cannabis as a digestive aid. Where are we today? We're in the middle of this decision-making pathway, thinking that India, which is one of the next growing superpowers globally, we definitely need to look at our healthcare system and assess what are the opportunities that lie in front of us. We have this bunch of indigenous knowledge on one side, and we have amazing modern chemistry on the other. What is going to be our approach? Our approach is very simple. We want to bridge the gap. These two excellent concepts already exist. We have amazing scientists in India like Dr. Rawat who have studied plants all their life. We have amazing scientists like Arno and Jaling from the Netherlands who've studied the modern chemistry part of it. So our idea is simple. We want these people to meet, discuss it, and we want the regulator to understand the discussion and the discourse of this debate better. So where do we want to be? Once we bridge the gap, we believe that the ultimate mode of where we want to be is a phytopharmaceutical. But yes, we also understand that a phytopharmaceutical has a much lengthier trial process, has more things to prove, as it involves a lot more Western concepts as well. Hence, we believe, yes, and this is how the phytopharmaceutical drug is defined as per the Drug Control Act. This is the new act that's coming out. At least 4 bioactive phytochemical compounds that can be quantitatively and qualitatively assessed. So we know that cannabis can help in so many different disease areas, but what is the one thing that we want to tackle upfront, and what is the one thing that we see a void in? Now we all know that the number of chronic patients in India is on a steady rise, mostly because of our lifestyle diseases. And that is something that is going to happen eventually, that we have a lot more people suffering from chronic issues than we have today. So moving ahead, currently India has more than 10 million patients getting into different types of chronic illnesses every year. And out of that, only 3% of them actually receive any type of palliative care. This is end-of-life care, improving their quality of life, improving their pain score, but not a lot of research has been done in this specific area, and especially for a country that grows so much opium, so much of its own opium, we do not have an effective system to put it through the medical system so that it reaches the end consumer who's been prescribed opium correctly. So what we believe is that this offers us an opportunity to hyperleap the whole opium ideology, because definitely opium is the gold standard of palliative care today, but it is very widely recognized that it does have certain side effects that over a period of time can get very devastating for the patient as well. So we need to look at an alternative to opium, as well as study cannabis from a positive line of sight. And as Dr. Singh mentioned correctly, we need more evidence-based approach to prove the efficacy of this as well. Now, as I was talking about palliative care, for the 10 million people, we have 235 palliative care centers in India. And out of that, the state of Kerala has 184. So we see the huge difference in what the state policy. Now, of course, palliative care and its implementation is a state-based concern. It's not a center-based concern. But we see how certain states have taken the baton up themselves and created a policy. In fact, most of the palliative care centers in Kerala have easier access to opium than the other palliative care centers in India. And alongside the herbal extracts that we want to develop certain types of phytomedicines, and that's specifically catering towards the palliative care market, where we're not looking at actually curing the whole disease cycle, but improving their quality of life. And that is something we believe has been an ignored chapter in medical education as well. And coming ahead, I think a lot of new professionals as well as old professionals acknowledge that palliative care is something that we now need to seriously look at, because now we have an aging population, though we have very young people and the demographic is very young, but we also have an aging population at the same time. So how are we going to create the right kind of balance of safe and effective herbal medicine that could also be affordable probably for the right kind of audience? What is our vision for the future? Our vision for the future is very simple: patient-centric care with safety and efficacy at the heart of plant-based medicine. We want a multi-impact approach of integrative healthcare. We don't believe in only cannabis. We want to use other effective herbs to mix with cannabis to maybe reduce the potency of cannabis as well. Hyperleaping the more holistic form of medication than a reductionist form. We want to understand Ayurveda better so that we look at the whole person as a system and not only as one part of the system. And at the same time, the reductionist form of this what we talk about is more about like breaking it down to single compounds and then understanding at that level. But we believe that's not the approach, especially with a plant, and that has been proven over multiple trials globally. And yes, the last and the most important thing is inspiring confidence amongst practitioners. Mainly, these are the important people who are going to prescribe this, administer this. They have to have the right kind of confidence. So it's very important that they are a part of the process in the development stage itself, so that we don't have too much education to go through later. So thank you for being patient, and